Welcome friends to another r/idontworkherelady video. If you can go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, I promise I won't ask for your manager. That said, our first story of the day is by Accountant FIFO. My name is... So this story takes place in the early 2000s at a certain electronic chain known for their blue and yellow color scheme. I had a tradition when I was in college that whenever I got an A on a test, I would treat myself to a DVD. Now back in those days, there were no streaming services and I didn't have cable, so buying season sets was the only way to watch certain shows. The only question I had was which show to buy today. I was browsing the DVD section pondering that question when I heard it, the infamous sound that can only be attributed to be an annoyed Karen wanting assistance. I stepped to the side muttering sorry as I continued to read the back of a DVD box, but she didn't want to get to the shelf. She wanted me to pay attention to her. "What are you doing? I need your help," she said. "Excuse me?" I replied, not comprehending what was happening. What followed was the usual back and forth, with her accusing me of being lazy and working at this store, despite the fact that I was wearing a green shirt, and me continuing to protest that I wasn't an employee. Finally, she said it. "I want to speak to your manager. What's your name?" Me being sarcastic says, "Taylor Swift." "Alright Taylor, let's see how you enjoy unemployment," she said, spinning on her heel and heading for the customer service desk. Smiling, I walked right out of the store without my DVD. Disappointing, but imagining the scene of the oblivious and crazy woman demanding that Taylor Swift get fired from an electronics store was more entertaining than anything I could have bought that day. Does anybody know any other good names you could give to a Karen? If a Karen came up to me and they said, "What's your name? I'm going to report you." I know there's a lot of names that could start with the name Mike. If you know any good names, let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Joe Satome. "We don't work here, but what the heck, I'll take your order. In my youth, my family was rather poor, lower middle class. My dad, who couldn't read or write, worked graveyard shift at a creamery. My mother, a housewife, was very active in PTA and other community activities. My dad's job paid the bills and put staple foods on the table, but left no room for comfort expenses. As soon as I was old enough, I got a paper route. The monthly funds went towards padding our family budget. One simple joy we took pleasure in was once a month, we would splurge on a quiet salad and pizza dinner at the local Pizza Hut." This story takes place 1987 to 1998-ish. I was about 14 at the time. We arrived one Sunday afternoon at the local pizza parlor. We went in, we sat down at our regular table, and we waited for the waitress to come take our order. We talked, we waited, we cracked jokes and waited some more. We started to realize something was not quite right after 10 to 15 minutes. We had heard the phone ring a few times, but other than that, there was none of the usual sounds of bustling workers in the kitchen area. Curious, I slid out of the bench and approached the cashier's counter. Looking around in the back area, I could not see a living soul. "Hello?" I called out. Nothing. "Anybody back there?" Again, no response. Now I was feeling that distinct edgy feeling one gets while watching a horror movie. I returned to my parents and informed them what I discovered, or should say lack of discovery. "Check the restrooms," my dad suggested. My mom agreed. She checked the women's room while dad checked the men's. No one. Now we were all very concerned and more than a little frightened. We had heard on TV and in the newspapers how sometimes a robbery goes bad and it was only discovered when employee bodies were found. "Call the police," Mom suggested, pointing at the phone on the wall, which chose that very moment to ring out loud, making us all jump in fright. "The freezer," I said over the ringing phone. "What?" Mom asked. "The freezer. In horror movies, that's where the bodies are always at, right?" "I'll look," I said. "The heck you will," my mom responded with authority. "Your father will check it." My beloved father, the man I admired most in the world, pointed at me and said, "He runs faster." In the end, I did indeed go behind the counter, by the simple fact that my parents were too busy arguing over who would go check in the back to notice me walking off. First, I armed myself with an impressively large and surprisingly sharp round pizza cutter sitting on a counter. Next, I checked the entirety of the back area. The back door was locked from the inside. Then I checked the manager's office cubicle. Finally, I approached the freezer. I knew what I was going to find. I've seen the scene in plenty of movies. By this point, both my parents noticed my absence and had joined me, staring at the freezer door with morbid anticipation. I grabbed that handle, pulled and threw the door open, and sure enough, there staring back at us were boxes of pizza making supplies. But no bodies. What? I was, truth to tell, morbidly disappointed. Nobody. No bodies, nothing. No workers. We were the only ones in the pizza parlor. "Hello," came a call from the front. I'm pretty sure if a little more effort had been put into the jump scare, we would have hit our heads on the ceiling. Quickly, we approached the front. I recall my heart racing a mile thinking an employee had arrived, only to find a middle-aged gentleman waiting along with his wife by the "wait to be seated" sign. "Oh, there you are," he said. "We would like a table for two." "I'm sorry, sir," my mother replied. "We don't work here." They say, "Okay, but we want a table for two." "There's nobody here. We checked," Mom explained. "Yes, I can see the place is empty, so can we have a table in the back?" the man pressed. "We don't work here. As far as we can tell, there's nobody here that's supposed to be here," Mom further elaborated. "So where can we sit?" "Oh, just find a place to park your butts. This place is empty," my dad butted in. My father, bluntly honest and always absurdly practical, says, "Honey, just call the police. Let them know what we found." With that decided, my dad scuttled off to the salad bar. Let it be known, my father was never one to let an opportunity for a meal go to waste. It took over an hour for a police officer to arrive. The reason it took so long, as the officer would explain later, was that dispatch had downgraded our call to non-emergency status. During the wait, however, we had to deal with a few things. "Waiter, we would like menus, please." My dad, being the helpful sort with a decidedly odd sense of humor, gave the couple menus. "One sweet tea and one unsweet with lemon, please." I was already hitting the fountain drink machine. I was there, it was there, and Mom had found the coffee supplies, so what the heck? I brought them their drinks. "We would like 2 dinner salads and a large pepperoni pizza." Dad pointed to the plates by the salad bar and told them, "Might be a few minutes on the pizza, gotta wait for an employee to show up first, but go ahead and eat as much salad as you want." Then one of the nearby churches let out, "Hello, there's 4 of us. Hi, we got 2 more coming. I tried calling several times. Can I get 2 large pizzas to go?" By the time the police officer arrived, my mom and I were effectively running the parlor, along with a guy who came in from the church with his family. He said he once worked at the other Pizza Hut in town while in college. Mom took orders, I delivered drinks and food, I got tips, and the young man made the pizzas. My dad? He was busy eating and chatting with the customers. As for people paying for their food, neither my father or I could calculate our way past 10 fingers and 10 toes. Mom, on the other hand, was one of those super annoying people of her generation that could calculate a whole string of numbers in her head faster than you could type on a digital calculating machine. Really, really annoying. So she figured up the amount, including tax, and had them pay with checks. The checks were slid under the cash register. The register itself, we didn't even try and touch. When the officer arrived, we were quite happy to recognize him as one of the officers my dad was friends with. Back then, police officers on the night shift could come by the creamery my dad worked at and get free ice cream from the employees' break room. Dad would often take time to shoot the breeze with them for a few minutes. Officer Shield, as I'll call him, immediately recognized my dad and asked him what was going on. My dad explained the situation and I butted in, sounding a little disappointed, I'm sure, that we didn't find any dead bodies in the freezer. Officer Shields first went to the register, opened it, and confirmed there was still cash in the till box, then walked around the inside and outside of the building. No signs whatsoever of any kind of disturbance. He called it in and waited for orders from higher up. In the meantime, never let it be said a police officer is willing to pass up an opportunity for free food. 20 to 30 minutes later, I can't recall, but eventually he got a call back, telling him to lock up the place. They were trying to contact the owner of the franchise, but problem, he couldn't find the keys to the parlor, and the main doors had to be locked from either the outside with a key or the doors locked from the inside with the latch, then exit out the back door, which required a key to lock the bolt from outside. Officer Shield called that fact back in. A few minutes later, the lead officer on shift arrived to evaluate the situation. What did he find? A pizza parlor half full of customers happily chowing down on pizza. When he asked, understandably confused, why Officer Shield called in his report saying there were no employees on the premises when clearly customers were being served, at which point I oh so happily piped in while handing off a pizza to go to a waiting customer saying, "Oh, we don't work here, we're just being helpful." So eventually the police managed to contact the owner after a couple of hours. The owner contacted the manager and the manager came storming in. Lots of anger and confusion. The manager, in a fluster, tried to accuse my parents and I of theft of company property, but Officer Shield would have none of that and pointed out the checks, the order slips, and the list of anything we used. Then he pointed out the fact that we could have just left the place empty and thieves could have ransacked the parlor. She backed down and focused on contacting the workers that were supposed to be on duty. Turned out the assistant manager had found out that very morning her boyfriend was having an affair. She had then gone on a tirade, taking her anger out on her male employees, verbally abusing them. They chose not to take the abuse and walked out. The assistant manager then just decided to up and quit, leaving the shop wide open. As for my parents and I, we were informed by Officer Shield very firmly that should we, for whatever reason, find ourselves in such a situation again, it would be far more helpful if we refrained from being helpful. And yes, we did pay for our food and drinks, but we still got banned for life from that parlor. I mean, understandably, if I was the owner of that franchise and I walked in and I found out some randoms walked in there and then started making food and serving food and doing orders, I would be understandably pretty upset. I guess it's good that the police talked them down, but even the police shouldn't have been supporting that in any way. But honestly, one of the most unique stories I've ever read here, and definitely a story worth sharing. This next story is by Turtle Inn. I don't work at the dollar store, but I'll go ahead and help. A few years ago, I worked at a local grocery store chain. The uniform was a blue-collared shirt and black slacks, along with a name tag and apron. This happened after I did a morning shift and had gone to a dollar store to get some snacks. I wasn't wearing my apron and name tag and was just wandering the store. While I'm doing so, a Hispanic man approaches me holding what looked like a month to 2-month-old puppy. The puppy was small enough to be held easily in just his hand, but not so small that it was still nursing. He doesn't speak English very well, but in a short exchange, he asks me where he can find a leash for his puppy. I tell him I don't work there, but I know where it is. I don't think he understood the first part, but I led him to the pet aisle, and after some searching, we found a leash and a cat harness, which I then help him wrangle his puppy into. I then lead him to the front of the store to the cash register. He does a double take as he compares the dollar store employee's uniform of a mint green shirt and khakis to my blue shirt and black slacks, and only just realizes in that moment, I'm not actually an employee. He thanked me for my help and apologized for the confusion. I laugh it off and go to grab my snacks. I think I saw him leave with his spouse or relative whom he pointed me out to at the front as I checked out. It's nice to stop and help some people, but it's also way easier to stop and help somebody when they have a puppy. Especially one so small that you need a cat harness in order to put a leash on it. That's just adorable. And our final story of the day is by Smeggy Smeg. Wearing a blue shirt? Which router should I buy? This was a little over a decade ago. I was in a certain big electronics store browsing the external hard drives on my way home from work, wearing khaki pants and a blue button-up shirt, although not a polo like the store workers wear. I guess you can say I brought this on myself. A very petite old lady wearing the most faded old flower dress over her scrawny frame walks up to me holding 2 Wi-Fi routers, one tiny model and the other an extreme gamer model in her shaky little hands. "Which of these should I get?" she asks in her old gruff voice. I politely say, "Sorry ma'am, I don't work here." But I guess she was hard of hearing because before I'm finished speaking, she blurts out shouting, "My grandson comes over and wants to play his iPod games on the internet, but he says I need Wi-Fi and my computer doesn't have it. This one says it's good for games, but it's $400. Can I get this $30 one instead?" I take a quick look at the router shelf, hand her the $80 model and tell her shouting back, "This model should be good enough. Unplug the network cable from your computer and plug it in here," pointing to the wireless access network port on the photo on the box. "And take the cable in the box and connect it to your computer here," pointing to a LAN port in the photo. She shouts, "Thank you, young man. I knew my grandson was full of it when he said I needed to get the most expensive one." And she turns and slowly ambles her way towards the checkout counter. "Sorry, kid." I mean, in all fairness, an $80 wireless router for one kid playing an iPod game is definitely going to be more than enough. As somebody that got their own Wi-Fi modem router set up for gigabit internet, if the kid complains because it's not expensive enough after that, they're just spoiled because that should be more than good enough. But with that said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.